What is freedom? Monkey D. Luffy vs. Marshall D. Teach is one of the most anticipated battles of the One Piece story. Ever since that cherry pie incident back in Jaya, we could see that Blackbeard was a perfect foil to Luffy, completely opposite in some ways, but they are both insane individuals with some similarities as well. Blackbeard will be one of, if not the final antagonist in One Piece, but what if I told you that there's more on the line than just the title of the King of the Pirates? That this battle will shake the One Piece world to its core. Yes, two of the members seeking unmatched heights, but ultimately Blackbeard vs. Luffy is a symbolic battle for true freedom. Blackbeard vs. Luffy, or Anarchy vs. Liberation. Let's start with Blackbeard, his ambitions, and dive into what I can only describe as an evil insanity. My favorite characters in anime and manga are never the average Joes, it's never the relatable ones, it's always the ones with a few screws loose, the most insane and the more charismatic, more entertaining individuals, the ones that are exciting and unpredictable. This brings us to Marshall D. Teach, the man who was willing to break the only rule his adopted father ever gave him, the rule to never kill your own sworn brother of the Whitebeard Pirates. But did Blackbeard respect this? No. For his own selfish desires, Blackbeard crossed a line that no Whitebeard pirate would dare cross, whether it be out of pure respect, fear, or a little bit of both. But when you really think about it, no one screams pirate like Blackbeard. He's up there with the Rogers, the Luffys, and the Shanks as some of the most piratey characters in the world full of pirates. Of course, it comes down to some of the inspiration for his character being Edward Teach, the actual Blackbeard, who was known for shooting his own crewmates in the leg just for the hell of it. A true chaotic wildcard who ruled through fear. Overall, one of the most wild pirates with a reputation that would continuously grow in size. But going back to the Blackbeard in One Piece, he kills Thatch for a devil fruit that he had been waiting for years, and justifies this in his own head as a twisted form of fate. Me personally, I love Blackbeard for all the wrong reasons, and also for the right ones, including his iconic laugh, and it's because I truly love that Blackbeard has a shot at becoming the greatest villain in One Piece, and that's why I get so excited every time he shows up. But with all this being said, we have to ask ourselves, what exactly does it mean to be truly free in the first place? True freedom is the ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want. So is true freedom acting without regard of consequences, being without restraints, whether that be physical, mental, or spiritual? Now this begins to beg a question of, is true absolute freedom even possible to obtain? Are we as people even able to reach this level of freedom in the first place? Or is it a more idealistic based goal? Something to continuously strive for and continue to push yourselves towards, but acknowledging that no matter how close we get, pure freedom might not be obtainable in the end. And when we look at freedom as a concept, it is so deeply tied to One Piece and its story. After all, the very essence of becoming a pirate is a sign of going against the government, being free from their laws, privileges, and societal customs. Becoming a pirate is usually a conscious decision to say f the law, you kings and the corrupt government. I'd rather live as I please, even if that means putting myself in the way of danger. So with Luffy rising as Jolly Roger, this was the very first step to becoming truly free, living a free life and accepting that he would have to face dangers and enemies in the future that would potentially attempt to take his life and freedom away, whether it be pirates or marines. Freedom itself is in this case tied to strength in One Piece. The strongest can do as they please. Almost no one dares to tell Whitebeard what to do, and that's why Shanks showing up on his ship telling him to call back Gates was so disrespectful. Whitebeard is one of these ultimate pirates, meaning he's one of the freest of the free. Once again, his only rule being to not kill each other. It's even told to us that the Whitebeard pirates can do whatever heinous crimes they commit as long as they don't break that one rule. Now the reason I bring this up is because it shows that even Whitebeard himself had created his own one law to maintain at least a very civil understanding. And you can even fight, but going as far as death is too far. And this shows us exactly how Blackbeard represents anarchy, because anarchy being one interpretation of true freedom. True absolute freedom can't exist in a place where laws restrain folks from acting as they would like to. Now yes, this can be dangerous of course, because when you have insane individuals out there in the world who are going to think pure freedom means I can kill or assault whoever I please, I can rob and commit heinous deeds if I do want to. This does sound pretty damn stereotypically piratey, I must admit, but when factoring it into our own society, our own worlds, it just goes to show that most people people, despite how much they say they might value true freedom over everything, they might not really mean that, or maybe they just don't fully grasp and understand what that entails. Absolute freedom itself is a complete contradiction to a government which really only hampers freedom, as we mentioned earlier. But there is a trade-off of being safe and being protected. Now, I think everyone should really ask themselves, what do they value more, freedom or safety? And then more importantly, really sit down and analyze and ask yourself, why and to what extent is valuing safety a sign of cowardice when sacrificing free will? And I do believe there's a spectrum where you can sway to one side or the other. I'm not expecting everyone to completely sway to one side on the pendulum and be completely extreme. These are just interesting things to think about because we're so accustomed to saying that we want both, but without much thought of understanding that there is a give and take. And it makes sense because they both sound great to our ears. Now, so how does this all tie back into One Piece? Well, I picture Blackbeard, who made his Yonko base a true pirate paradise, envisioning a world of pure anarchy, a world where good or bad things are fair game, no rules or regulations. In this world, strength would be so important because to get what you want and also to protect yourself and those that you love, you must be strong and capable. Someone who's weak in an anarchist state only gets completely destroyed, and someone who's strong is able to defend whatever he says, whatever he believes in, and is truly able to live his life without fear and instead with freedom. And so now we understand why the great pirates are so powerful, why it's a requirement. I mean, just think of Roger, Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Shanks, and the most appealing aspect to the classic shonen adventure is this very concept that you have to be continuously leveling up, getting stronger day by day. There's always greater heights to reach, and so One Piece tying that in with this very message of freedom is a very interesting concept. I think when Oda really decided to go all the way in with this was with Haki, because Haki is a great addition for this since it incorporates willpower, and as someone who never liked Haki for a while, I'm starting to like it more and more, and that is specifically due to the conqueror's Haki aspect, the willpower that showcases these people who are willing to become kings and do and take whatever they want, become true conquerors. That is the appeal of the post-time skip and even Wano era of One Piece. The final important point to make here regarding freedom is the grand adventure of the One Piece itself. I'm sure many of you understand or at least have heard about this term that gets thrown around quite a lot, and that is financial freedom. Money, treasure, and riches might seem like a shallow goal to some, but truly, what is more poverty than treasure and gold plundering? I mean, Luffy, since the day he heard about the Pirate King, since the day he heard of the One Piece treasure, he knew deep down that he wanted it. And it's the journey, the adventure that it takes to get there, but at the end of the day, being rich is a form of freedom. And so I think when Luffy heard about this, his mind just ran wild because he's only limited by his own physical capabilities, and now with Gear 5, he's finally free to do the things that he always wanted to, but was bound by reality. Gear 5 being his peak is because Luffy's abilities are now able to come into fruition. He's such a creative mind, and coming up with his new fun abilities off the cuff and putting them into use in battle is what Luffy always wanted to do. Finding the riches left behind for decades removes other boundaries that are set on Luffy. Just like Gear 5 allows him to do a bunch of cool new moves like jump roping a dragon, grabbing lightning out the sky, turning the ground and opponents into rubber, and plenty more. Think of all the cool and fun things you could do after becoming the richest man in the world. Sure, there's most likely a lot more to the One Piece than just a giant treasure chest of gold, but I have to be honest and say that it would be pretty disappointing if there wasn't any real, tangible, valuable treasure at Laugh 2. Just think of El Dorado in Skypiea. If there can be a city of gold, imagine the great riches that are left at Laugh 2. To truly achieve this all, money, power, and fame, Luffy or Blackbeard could buy any amount of food they want, they could throw giant massive parties for the rest of their lives. Blackbeard might want to buy rare devil fruits, and they wouldn't even have to worry about spending too much money because when you're this wealthy, you can truly live free without any consequences or any worries. And I think a perfect way to summarize all of this is that freedom ain't free. So yes, now we've addressed the importance of freedom in One Piece, we've discussed why Smelly Blackbeard is the representation of anarchy, which is his ideal version of freedom. Now let's explore why Luffy represents liberation. But before that, if you've enjoyed anything I've said in this video so far, go ahead and drop a like. It really goes a long way into getting this video out to as many people as possible, as well as blowing up our channel in the algorithm. And while you're at it, subscribe and hit the bell like Luffy and Skypiea to be notified for future videos. This might seem a little bit more obvious: Nika, the warrior of liberation, the drums of liberation. And since the beginning of the story, Luffy has been freeing people, whether it be his friends like Nami and Zoro, or entire kingdoms and countries like Alabasta, Skypiea, and now most importantly, Wano. This legend of Nika being so tied to freedom to the point where even slaves pray to him. Luffy is completely obsessed with freedom, but this is a bit unexplored still. It's strange because you would expect the main character to be the most fleshed out, but Luffy's motivations still seem like something is missing. For example, why is it that Luffy is so obsessed with being the freest in the first place? Is it simply a natural desire? And knowing Oda in One Piece, this might be an entire mystery on its own, but my guess is that it is something integral to discovering the mystery of his dream. Luffy is truly a force of liberation. You can see how angry it makes him to see corrupt, evil kings and rulers take freedom away from people. Luffy's idea of liberation is so important because, as we see during Wano, even when Luffy was going to save the slaves of Udon, they couldn't let go of that slave mindset because of their wills being shattered. The arc where Luffy awakens Nika, Luffy not only liberates these people in a literal way, but also in a spiritual and mental way as well. And like I mentioned earlier, with strength being so tied to freedom, we can even look to our real world as well, where people dumb down their slaves and make sure that they don't have nutritious meals and aren't becoming smarter, stronger, overall suppressing them in every single way. One thing I really love the most about Luffy being tied to liberation is the fact that because he embodies the power philosophy of freedom so much, you can see how much it infuriates him to see those who are not free. And Luffy is someone who does not want to live with regrets, and no matter how crazy the things he does are, as long as he does this, he is even willing to die trying. Remember when Luffy first met Kobe on a Vita ship, what did he do? He laughed at him. He called him a loser and a wimp. Kobe was a coward, someone who didn't even attempt to fight for his own freedom. He was willing to pass on his dreams all because he was so scared of this fat mean pirate lady. In Luffy's eyes, this is completely pathetic, but he ultimately teaches him a valuable lesson. It's strange because in a weird way, Luffy freed this boy who would become a marine, someone who fights for justice and goes against pirates as a whole. But Luffy didn't care about that. He was just being honest and blunt, and it seems like even when Luffy isn't trying, it just seems to come so natural to Luffy to liberate and free people from their own mentality and strengthen their will. And going back to Haki once again, willpower and also free will. All of this Luffy talk also makes me wonder for a while now, was Luffy always destined by fate to eat the Nika fruit, or what if since we learned that Nika's will was present in the fruit itself, guided itself to Luffy? What I'm saying is that if the will of Nika recognized the liberating nature and freedom that Luffy has inherently since a child, the boy who aspired to truly be free, someone willing to stab his eye out to prove he was worthy to sail on Shank's ship. Luffy always had this energy of being a pirate, and after eating the Nika fruit, this was only amplified. You might even call this a perfect pairing, and I talked about it in the past. At least when it comes to zones who have their own will according to the Godose, I like to think that because someone like Rob Lucci, who is a bloodthirsty killer, someone who craves violence and blood, this very nature could have been why the leopard fruit was the perfect pairing for him, some sort of destiny or otherworldly law of attraction that is unexplained. And just like Luffy was amplified by Nika, the leopard fruit might have amplified Rob Lucci's already violent and bloodthirsty personality. And after really sitting down and thinking about freedom and anarchy and liberation as a whole, I've come to realize one thing. I like to think of a pirate's freedom as the equivalent to an admiral's justice, like how Admiral Okiji was lazy justice, Akainu was absolute justice, and Kizaru was unclear justice. To these great pirates, Luffy's freedom is liberation, and Blackbeard's freedom is anarchy. Both are some of the most extreme and pure forms of freedom, but they are ideals of freedom which put them at odds, just like in Jaya. So let me know in the comments, what is your ideal view of freedom? What are your thoughts on anarchy versus liberation? Both some of the purest forms of it. And I urge you to really sit down and ponder, how much do you personally value freedom? I think it's time that we're actually honest with ourselves about this pure freedom we idealize so much in our head. Because in reality, we don't always carry this out with our own actions. Often we see in One Piece these top tier legends are very extreme in their actions, their ideologies, and yeah, it's an anime and a manga, but it's always interesting to dissect and analyze. It's easy to do things in the name of justice, but in order to be one of the great marines, an extreme form of justice is birthed through extreme passion. I think you could say the same thing about the top tier pirates, and it would be worth exploring in a future video what exactly other pirates' sense of freedom is. Remember to like the video to help us get this out to as many One Piece fans as possible, subscribe for future content, and if you've enjoyed the video, YouTube says that you'll enjoy one of these two videos even more.